Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Tarkin, it seems like the ShadPS4 team was not content to let the PS5 emulation developers out there have all the glory in this week. That is because a new version of ShadPS4 0.18 is out today, fixing a lot of issues in PlayStation 4 emulation and just giving us smoother and better performant PlayStation 4 on your PC. And honestly, 2026 has been a banner year for emulation, both on the home console scene as well as on the arcade scene, and ShadPS4 is definitely improving a ton. We're going to be going over the new improvements, what it means, getting a little bit technical on some of the freezes that were previously occurring, why they occurred, and why they might not occur as much in the future, and just talking about the future of PlayStation 4 emulation in general. Because trust me, it's going to be even more exciting in the back half of the year. I'm sure in the next 18 to 24 months you're going to have the majority of PlayStation 4 games playable on your PC. If we're getting too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But I've been talking a lot about ShadPS4 on the channel recently because maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, it got a really nice update. We have the Gravity Rush 2 fork available for that specific game. I was also doing some Steam Machine PlayStation 4 testing to show you guys the overall ability for it to run PlayStation 4 games. And every single time ShadPS4 updates with bug fixes, new features, and improved emulation, it's going to benefit everyone, not just for the people out there that have absolutely colossal rigs, minus for editing and gaming, but for people that have kind of those mid-tier PCs or even Steam machines as well, because better, more efficient emulation is always going to lower the overhead on what you need to actually emulate something. And this version of ShadPS4 definitely brought down a little bit of the overhead specs, because I noticed on my main editing rig, an i9-12900K with a 3080 Ti and 64GB of RAM, that I was using maybe like 3 to 4% less system resources, and I made sure that I closed all the applications the same way I do when I'm capturing any emulation tests. So you'll see here on the 17th, late into the evening, ShadPS4 version 0.18.0, or codename Ultra Persona, came out, and it has a lot of good updates to games that you might want to play that have been working pretty well on ShadPS4. And that's definitely important because we don't just want games that get into the game and you can play at full speed. We want to make sure that all the graphics are correct, and at least on the Persona side of things, you're going to get some better shadows on this update as well. You're also going to get some improvements in some of the FMV videos with low-level emulation, because apparently some of those videos were broken and are not going to be working. But popping back over to Gravity Rush 2, I am capturing this on the most recent release of Shad, but do be aware that you're going to see a few hitches when I start, and that is because I didn't have a shader cache built up here where I had it on the actual Gravity Rush 2 fork, and that's something that you always have to play the games at least a little bit for those shaders to actually cache and that hitching to stop. And that's just something that we deal with all modern emulation. Just talked about it on the PlayStation 3 side of things. We have it on stuff like the 3DS emulation as well, and of course PS4. And that's just because you have to cache the shader and get it ready to deal with the actual GPU in your system, because it does function different driver-wise than on PlayStation 4. Once those are all cached in, you're going to notice in this capture that all of the slowdowns and hitches are basically just going to disappear. Now, sure, in an hour or two, we'll probably get another area in the game that has a call that has to be cached that we haven't seen before, but that is just something that you're always going to have to deal with the first time you emulate this. And yes, I could have dragged over some of the caching from one instance to the other, but I kind of like to talk about how these things are if you haven't tried them yet whatsoever. And if you've yet to test PlayStation 4 emulation, it is a good time to jump in. Just go ahead and make sure that you actually take a look at the compatibility listing that's going to be on ShadPS4's website and on GitHub, because you don't want to spend all the time getting it set up, bringing one of your legally owned PlayStation 4 games to the party, and then finding out it's just going to black screen when you try to play it. Because trust me, the amount of games you would actually want to play on ShadPS4 right now, and no, that's not a knock against the emulator, I think it's outstanding, is very limited. I played around a bunch with Gravity Rush 2, works really well for me. Bloodborne, definitely a good time, especially with the 4K 60 patches, but for every game that's going to run really well on ShadPS4, there's a dozen plus games that aren't even going to get into the actual menu or allow you to play it. And I'm sure some of the information that's being gleaned with PlayStation 5 emulation, both Kitty PS5 as well as SharpEmu, can be useful for PlayStation 4 emulation as well. Because you have to remember, both PS4 and PS5 are based on AMD APUs, and even if the PlayStation 5 is definitely much enhanced and more powerful than PlayStation 4, then give it like your PC right now. Sure, you could switch from a 30 series GPU to a 5000 series GPU, and sure, I could take my i9-12900K and put in a modern Intel part, but there is still so much overlap in what they can do. Obviously, they are still part of the same nuclear family of hardware, and that means that a lot of this information can and will be used back and forth. It's not as easy as a copy and paste job, but it is something that you can actually do when you're dealing with this stuff. let's go into the first soundtrack sample of only one on this video, because I got a lot more technical stuff to talk about as to what ShadPS4 improves on this release. But go ahead and listen, catch the vibes of Gravity Rush 2, and I'll be right back with a lot more emulation. So here's the fun thing about work in progress emulation development. Again, not a knock against it whatsoever, just kind of a humorous observation. This was supposed to have an update to a flag event that was causing the Shadow of the Colossus game on PlayStation 4 to hang at boot almost all the time. And that is an issue I definitely face. So I went ahead and updated to this, confirmed the update was live, even restarted my PC. But in my instance of trying to test Shadow of the Colossus, it still froze on the boot. Maybe there's something particular about my system. Maybe I'm missing one library from the actual folder, or maybe it just doesn't like Windows 10 because that's still what I'm on, and Microsoft will never make me leave until they finally completely abandon it. But that's what you're going to get when you're still testing work in progress emulation. Sometimes the result that your friend gets might not be the one you get, and vice versa. And that is something I don't want to say struggle with on the channel all the time, but always have to work around. Sometimes it just takes a minute to get this sort of stuff actually working, but obviously in the future I'm sure it will get buttoned up, and maybe it is just an oversight in this build and we'll get it fixed up quickly. But moving back over to Gravity Rush 2 on the most recent version of ShadPS4, now that we've actually gotten a bit into the game and those shader caches have rebuilt themselves, you will see that it is performing much smoother. And this is just the stock game, the 30 frame per second version. There are patches out there to bring it up to 60 frames per second, but I never test on new release emulation updates any sort of patch. That is because if there's an issue, a glitch, if it doesn't run, I'm not sure whether or not I can quote unquote blame the emulator or if I blame the patch. So every single time I test stuff like this, someone might leave a comment saying, but why didn't you patch it to get the 60 frame per second version? It is a very intentional choice. I want to be able to test the base game, so when I know there is an issue, I can point to exactly what the problem would be and not kind of have ambiguity in what could actually be causing that situation. But as far as Gravity Rush 2 is concerned, on the new version of ShadPS4, it is great, and on the fork it is also good as well. And you can go through all of the patch notes here. I will leave a link to the blog post below where you can see every single thing that's been updated and improved. You're also going to get some improvements to Infamous as well, but I didn't have that one on this PC during capturing. I didn't want to wait like 6 hours for that to actually quote unquote come over from my collection and go into my PC. Well, I do own the game, so I probably could have done it a little bit quicker. And stuff like Bloodborne, we just recently talked about on the Steam machine, is going to be exceptional on this version of ShadPS4. You can update the ever-loving hell out of it. You can go to 4K 60 frames per second. It is still probably the marquee example of just how good PlayStation 4 emulation can be on your PC. And if you've been thinking to yourself you want to jump in and try ShadPS4, this feels like a really natural entry point. Stick to the Bloodborne, stick to the Gravity Rush 2, the Infamous out there, give a Shadow Colossus a try and see if you can get any further than me. Just don't expect perfection and you won't be disappointed, because it's still going to take some years for PlayStation 4 emulation to really be buttoned up and usable by everyone. Think about something like our PS3 for PlayStation 3 emulation. They've been developing that thing for years, and it still only plays about 75% of the actual retail PlayStation 3 library. And again, I don't make any of these statements as to say that they're not working hard enough or not doing a good enough job, because it seems like 5% of people actually hear them that way. What I'm saying is that's how incredibly difficult and time-consuming it is to write any sort of emulator, and as you get further up into the console generations, it just takes more time. Although I'm pretty sure emulating PlayStation 3 probably takes more work than PlayStation 4, just because the PlayStation 3 was an absolute mess of ridiculous silicon, which was fun when it came out, but clearly today, you had to wonder what Sony was thinking with all the complexity in that hardware. Or something like PlayStation 4, again, an AMD APU, so at least makes more sense, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It just means it isn't as much of a nightmare as PlayStation 3, just having to deal with how strange that system would actually run stuff, and the synchronicity and all of the different cell engine kind of cores that they had to deal with. But honestly, this is improving a ton. I can't wait to see what the next version brings, and I'll definitely try to get Shadow of the Colossus booting in the background, because again, I'm not sure why, and I definitely want to check that game out on ShadPS4. But if you want to play this today, again, the blog post is in the description below, and then from there you can find the download page. And I will probably shortly do a PlayStation 4 tutorial for emulation as well, so if you want to see that, leave me a comment down below. And trust me, if you've never played Gravity Rush 2, one of the best games ever on a PlayStation console. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely check out some PlayStation 4 emulation. It keeps maturing every day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.